ideal home for this knight is this square. So keeping the knights on the board there, I think, the best decision by Gukesh.
Yeah. Just compare each of Gukesh's pieces to Magnus's counterpart. The white rook looks extremely active. The white knight beautifully placed, so no trades just yet. Also, the white rook, it really cuts off Magnus's king, right, from coming to the right side of the board. Now that Gukesh has maximized his own rook and knight, he's next going to get that king into the game. Advance that king, assist those pawns to move forward.
And look at that, Gukesh was looking away. He's normally the most focused player in the world, but now he knows that other results are most likely going in his favor. Even a loss, Gukesh should still be able to stay in this tournament. And yeah, really interesting there that even with 1 minute on his clock, Tanya, he's still kind of thinking about the tournament situation, not just this game alone.
Well, that's what really matters at the end of it, right? That is what will direct his decisions, what to keep on the board, what to get off it, because that's the decision that he has to make right now with the rook trade being offered. If Gukesh is happy with a draw, if he feels he gets his spot into the knockout, I believe he will trade the rooks. If he wants to play for more, he keeps the rooks on the board.
Interesting. Yeah, to me it feels like I'd want to keep that rook on the board just because of that D pawn that we're talking about. I want to have more resources to deal with it if it ever starts making the run down the board.
Yeah, and simple comparison, the white rook is very active. It can put pressure on another isolated pawn. It's not COVID anymore. You don't want to isolate necessarily. He keeps the rook on. The black rook passive, meanwhile, I was going to say. Unless it jumps in now and comes in behind, that would be a race. But
would you agree that that's an ambitious move by Gukesh?
Yes. I think Gukesh has looked over. There has been a result. We should update everyone. Levon Aronian has drawn with Nodibek Abdusattorov. That means Nodibek joins Gukesh on the same score group. I think for Nodibek that's a very good result. And Gukesh knows he should still be safe. Fedoseyev's in big trouble against Hikaru Nakamura. So Gukesh, knowing that he should be safe in this round-robin stage, taking risks. He wants to beat Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, things are heating up here. Yeah, Nodibek quite surely securing himself a spot based on the fact that Fedoseyev is in a dire position there against Hikaru Nakamura. Gukesh, though, still wanting to come away, I think, at the very least, with a draw here to have himself in decent position, though with 3 points he'll be fine in terms of qualifying to the top 8.
But James, it might be too soon to call any result on this position. I think it's a 3-result game right now. Magnus has got that D pawn, which is just 3 steps away from becoming a queen. He's making a choice right now. Does he keep his rook passive, defending that H pawn weakness, or does he bring it into activity, give up that pawn, and play for the win with his own D pawn? We're going to get to know more about Magnus's mindset right now with this next move.
And the tricky thing is there's no right or wrong here. Both moves are totally viable for Magnus, but it is a stylistic thing. Does he bring his rook active, bank everything, gamble on his d-pawn, or does he play it safe?
He plays it safe.
Okay, this is a check though. It is a fork. Gukesh could grab this pawn, but taking your eye off the ball here, allowing the d-pawn to run, that d spells disaster here, potentially for Gukesh.
That is as offside as it can get if he takes that pawn. Well, Magnus, he steps back. He doesn't even put that king closer to the knight. Leaves the decision to Gukesh. It's getting pretty tricky. And now Gukesh, under a minute, this is still anyone's endgame. Draw is not a very likely outcome, in fact, I want to say.
Oh, predictions again, maybe? Chat, what do you think? I won't put it on us. Chat, what do you think? Who's going to win this endgame?
Chat, David Howell is asking the questions. How well do you know Gukesh and Magnus? Send us your answers. What do you think will be the result of this game?
Oh, this would be symbolic as well. If Gukesh wins, taking down the endgame maestro in an endgame, that would be a huge turn up for the books. But
so he thinks better here of extending for that pawn, and he will drop the knight back here to the d5 square. A great central position for him to remain, but it's just going to be about maneuvering and, of course, yeah, opening up that threat onto the knight with a check to follow.
And just to mention, Tanya, if the black king comes back, we've actually seen that position before. That will be the second time. 3 times a position repeated, that is a draw.
He's not repeating. Magnus is not going to repeat. Even if he does it once, I think he wants more. His spot is safe. He wants to play this out till the end. Magnus is the kind of player who enjoys that as well, right? Just fighting it out, making his opponents sweat. By the way, our chat has spoken.
Oh?
A lot of them saying draw, and a lot of them believing in that Magnus effect in endgames.
Okay. I think it's a hard thing to vote against at times, right? The Magnus endgame. So we do pull that knight out of harm's way. We're going to centralize the rook here on the e-file.
I'm slightly surprised Magnus didn't jump a different kind of route there with his knight. He could have jumped in and maybe towards these pawns earlier. Now the black knight cannot really go anywhere. The black rook is a bit stuck. The black king a bit passive. Maybe he'll step that one forward. This is still very, very much in the balance. The one thing, I'll keep harping on about it, but the clock, if this gets down to a 10-second versus 1 minute situation, Gukesh is going to be in big, big trouble.
David, I have a question, a more conceptual question about this position. If the pieces are to come off the board, the rooks and the knights get traded off, who does that favor? The pure king and pawn endgame?
Very important question there, Tanya. I think if it's knights off especially, if it's just rooks, then probably a draw. But if everything comes off, only black can ever win, because this pawn will tie down the white king, and it's only a question of whether the black king can ever kind of, dart over towards this side of the board later. Imagine the board clears up, rooks, knights off. The black king will run, the white king will be totally stuck, blockading the d-pawn. So Magnus wants trades, Gukesh does not.
So how can we activate? Do we need to activate our white king? And if so, how do we? Because it feels really treacherous to move one step to the left onto the f-file because of that possible discovered check with a knight move and then the rook staring down that file.
Yeah, at some point you might have to retreat the knight just to bypass, just to step over and across onto the f-file. Or you kind of get ambitious and go with the white king up the edge of the board. Okay, a pin.
A pin, and I also want to point out that Magnus was setting up a bit of an idea of the b pawn moving forward. Has he played it?
Oh, he
it's
has.
on the board. He's targeting that central knight.
Oh, that knight is undermined. This white pawn. Okay, he finds a way to activate his king after all, but this white pawn has to defend its knight, so couldn't have been sidetracked there. Watch out later for one of the rooks. I'm not sure whether it's the white or black rook, but there is a new open file, a new avenue opened on the other flank.
Very sneaky. And the c4 pawn, it's so tender now, right? Now that there's no connect 3 on that side, that becomes a target for Magnus. And this is what he does. These small gains in these endgames, this is what gets that Magnus effect going. And then before you know it, a position that's completely under control is totally out of control.
Yeah, and first to break the pin, you might need to defend the piece at the back of the pin. So the move I would look at is, for example, to slide the king across, defend the rook, or this way. Now he's freed up his rook to run away. Watch out, you mentioned it, Tanya, the black knight can go back, and then it would start hitting pawns, this weak, isolated pawn.
Even though the bar isn't changing, I think the position is. I think the dynamics and the momentum is. Magnus has made so much progress with his pieces. Gukesh, one more weakness to deal with. I have a feeling that Gukesh has to be very careful in this endgame.
Oh yeah, he's really living life on the edge with the clock situation. His king as well, walking up the edge of the board to try and come forward.
Yeah. Feels like this would be the time for a pretty natural reposition of that rook over to the left-hand side of the board, because we've protected that knight and we can control the file first, right?
Beautiful move. I think it's time to switch focus. Magnus may be just checking that his king isn't in too much trouble, and he checks from the front. He can, however, just step back simply, so it's time to activate the black rook. But suddenly Magnus under 1 minute as well. It's going to get juicy now. Time scramble imminent.
And a Magnus lean there, he's trying to look for inwards. I think we're going to see that move, James, that you pointed out. Always look for ways to improve the position of your pieces. He does reach out for the rook, or he doesn't. He does come back with the knight, offering a trade, putting pressure on Gukesh's pawn.
Ooh, to trade or not to trade? Again, the question. Asking difficult things of Gukesh every single turn, Magnus. Look at the clock. Gukesh around the 10-second mark.
Make a move, 9-8.
He doesn't want the trade, but does this forfeits the pawn? No.
It's a tricky one. Sneaky.
The engine's telling me that it's not so simple, but I don't see it.
Yeah, the black knight, if it moves, would walk into a check. The black king would be hit. There would be a hit on the black rook, which would then be undefended. So the black knight is pretty much forced to defend its rook. Not only that, the knight will attack this pawn with a check.
Tricky. I love that.
Ooh.
And gets the exclamation, which is a good move right there by the engine. Magnus goes into the defense. It looks like he's defending the c-pawn, but what he's really doing is renewing the threat of knight takes pawn, capturing and winning that c-pawn that Gukesh has. The king sidesteps. This is not easy to defend. How are you keeping the c4 pawn alive for Gukesh? Is white in trouble here?
Big trouble, and it's deceptive, the evaluation bar. There we see he jumps in maybe the wrong way with his knight. Now the black rook is just going to move to an open file. That's the move Magnus wants to play anyway, and this pawn is almost indefensible. No way to hold it.
And Magnus gets everything. He gets the open line. He's about to get that question mark, the big blunder appeared, and the bar keeps going down. Is Magnus just going to be up a pawn?
And I think that pawn push, right, is the recognition that he has to let that pawn go in the end. And so it is, with the remaining time that he has, creates some kind of counterplay on the other side of the board. Magnus, though, also going to look to defend any aggression here on the right-hand side. We always have that opportunity for a check on the back rank.
That was actually the only immediately winning move from Magnus, ignoring the free pawn. He's going for checkmate. Checkmate threatened. The white king has nowhere to run if the black rook delivers a check. You have to move the white rook.
And then the d pawn can move forward, taking away more squares from the king. He'll just keep renewing the threat of checkmate. Gukesh trying to run away with his own king.
Did you see the head bolt from Magnus as well? He looked away. He was like, I've got this. The pawn is coming. That d pawn we talked about ages ago.
Oh, my goodness.
Now the king. He's closing in.
All of Magnus's pieces, the pawn, the knight, the king, the rook on the open line, and it's handshakes, and the world #1 wins.